At exactly 2:17 a.m., a train rolled into the station, and not a single soul stepped off. No screams, no bodies, no explanation. What you're about to hear was never meant to be told. Welcome back to Hidden Dark World. If you're new here, subscribe now, because stories like this don't stay buried forever. And before we begin, comment your city and the exact time you're watching this documentary, because tonight, this story feels closer than it should. The night the train arrived empty, the station clock stopped for exactly 47 seconds, and no one noticed until later. Platform 6 had been abandoned for years, sealed off after a minor collapse, but the train didn't care about barriers or common sense. It came in slow, screaming metal against metal, brakes shrieking like something wounded and pissed off at the world. The guard on duty, Hassan Rauf, later said the sound crawled inside his skull and scratched at his thoughts. He expected passengers, hundreds of them. The schedule said so. Instead, the doors slid open to nothing, just stale air, thick and sour, like old sweat and rusted fear. Lights flickered inside the compartments, revealing seats neatly arranged, bags still tucked under them, newspapers folded as if someone planned a return. No blood, no struggle, just absence, the kind that feels intentional. Hassan swore under his breath, called it bullshit, and radioed control. The response was delayed. When it came, the voice on the other end sounded wrong, flat, distant, like someone reading bad news they didn't fully understand. Secure the platform, they said. Do not board. That alone was strange. Protocol demanded inspection. Instead, orders came down fast and dirty. Seal exits, cut cameras, logged nothing. As the station emptied, Hassan noticed something else. The train was humming. Not engine noise, something lower, deeper, like a breath held too long. He stepped closer, heart pounding like a drum in a bad horror movie, and that's when he saw the condensation on the windows. Handprints, dozens of them, from the inside, pressed hard, fingers splayed, as if people had been trapped and tried like hell to get out. He staggered back, muttering curses, feeling suddenly watched. The train lights snapped off all at once, plunging the platform into darkness. When emergency lights kicked in, the train was still there, silent now, patient. Hassan would later say that was the moment he knew something was deeply, violently wrong. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't mechanical failure. It felt like the train had arrived exactly as planned, empty on purpose, and somewhere, whoever had been inside it was no longer where the rules of the world could reach them. By morning, officials claimed there had never been any passengers. The manifest, once listing 312 names, now showed zeros across every column. Families began calling, then screaming, then showing up at the station in angry broken clusters. Their loved ones had boarded that train. Tickets were scanned. Messages sent mid-journey. One man had texted his wife, running late, but I'm on board. That message time-stamped perfectly, 2:16 a.m. 1 minute before arrival. Then nothing. Authorities blamed a data synchronization error, a phrase so vague it felt like an insult. Behind closed doors, panic festered. Security footage from inside the train was corrupted. Frames skipping, faces blurring, audio reduced to static and low moans that made analysts sick to their stomachs. A junior technician quit on the spot, saying he heard whispers through his headphones, voices calling his name. He was told to shut up and sign an NDA. The government sealed the train inside a maintenance hangar and declared the incident resolved. But rumors don't die that easily. A cleaner assigned to the hangar reported finding fresh footprints leading from the train doors to the far wall, and stopping there, like the people wearing those shoes had simply ceased to exist. She was fired the same day. Online forums lit up with speculation, mass kidnapping, cult shit, experimental weapons. The truth was worse and far stranger. Internal memos leaked weeks later hinted at a classified project, something about transit anomalies and temporal displacement. The train, it seemed, hadn't just traveled through space, it had gone somewhere else entirely. And whatever happened during that journey erased people cleanly, like bad chalk marks on a board. Families were paid off, threatened, or both. Officially, no one died. Unofficially, the city learned how quiet grief could be when fear kept its hand over your mouth. Somewhere in storage, the train sat untouched, humming softly, waiting. And those handprints on the windows? They never faded, no matter how hard anyone scrubbed. 3 months later, a man staggered into a police station 200 kilometers away. His clothes were torn, his beard wild, eyes sunken and frantic. He gave one name, Imran Khalid, matching the vanished manifest. When asked where he'd been, he laughed, then cried, then whispered, still on the train. According to Imran, time inside didn't behave like time outside. The journey stretched and folded in on itself. Passengers slept, woke, slept again, unsure how long had passed. The windows showed nothing but darkness, occasionally broken by flashes of impossible landscapes, cities bent at wrong angles, skies boiling with color. People tried to force doors open. Some succeeded. They stepped out and never came back. Others changed. Their skin grayed, eyes glassy, voices echoing strangely, as if coming from a tunnel. Imran said the train spoke to them, not in words at first, but sensations, pressure behind the eyes, memories replayed out of order, guilt sharpened until it hurt like hell. One by one, people were called. They'd stand up calmly and walk toward the front carriage, faces blank, hands trembling. No screams, just compliance. Imran survived because he hid, crawling into an overhead compartment like a terrified animal. At some point, the train stopped. A door opened into a maintenance corridor that shouldn't have existed. He ran until his lungs burned. Police dismissed his story as trauma-induced psychosis. Then they checked his fingerprints. Perfect match. Security footage showed him materializing out of thin air near a service road. No entry point, no explanation. By morning, Imran was gone from custody. Files sealed. Officers warned to forget his face. But a nurse later swore she heard him screaming from an empty interrogation room, yelling that the train was coming back, and next time, it wouldn't let anyone hide. From that point on, silence became policy. Anyone digging too deep hit walls, legal threats, lost jobs, sudden accidents. Journalists backed off after anonymous warnings. A blogger who posted leaked documents vanished mid-live stream, his last words cut short by a sound like metal bending. Internally, officials argued. Some wanted to destroy the train. Others insisted it couldn't be destroyed. Tests showed the metal was ordinary, yet attempts to dismantle it failed. Tools snapped, bolts fused. Once during a power outage, the train lights turned on by themselves. Engineers heard footsteps inside. No one volunteered to check. The project was renamed, buried under layers of bureaucracy. But fear has a smell, and it leaked. Guards rotated constantly, many requesting transfers after reporting nightmares. Endless corridors, doors that wouldn't open, a voice promising release if they just stepped aboard. Psychologists called it shared delusion. They were wrong. The train wasn't passive. It was learning. Every human interaction left an imprint. Every emotion fed it. The longer it stayed, the stronger the pull became. Those assigned nearby felt drawn to it, compelled to walk closer, to listen. One night, a guard stood staring at the doors for hours, whispering apologies to someone who wasn't there. When they finally restrained him, he fought like hell, screaming that he didn't want to be left behind again. No one knew what he meant. No one asked, because asking meant acknowledging that the train remembered. And if it remembered, it might also be waiting. The second arrival wasn't announced. No schedule, no warning. The same train appeared on a rural line at dawn, rolling through fog like a ghost that didn't give a damn about disbelief. This time, one passenger stepped off. A teenage girl, barefoot, shaking, eyes wide with something older than fear. She collapsed on the platform, clutching a ticket dated 5 years in the future. Doctors found her dehydrated, malnourished, but alive. When questioned, she said she'd boarded yesterday. To her, almost no time had passed. She remembered people screaming near the end, remembered the train accelerating without moving, remembered a door opening onto nothing. She said most passengers were still inside. "It's not done," she whispered. "It's collecting." Authorities rushed her into isolation. Within hours, she began drawing symbols, circles broken by lines, doors inside doors. Then she stopped speaking altogether. That night, cameras recorded her sitting upright in bed, staring at the wall, smiling faintly as if listening to a private joke. At 3:33 a.m., every monitor flatlined simultaneously. Her body remained warm for hours after. No cause of death determined. The rural station was shut down, scrubbed, and reopened under a new name. Locals still swear they hear trains at night, even though the tracks were removed. They say if you listen carefully, you can hear murmurs carried on the wind, passengers counting stops that no longer exist. A retired rail engineer broke his silence years later. Dying of cancer, he had nothing left to lose. In a recorded interview, he admitted the train was part of an experimental project, an attempt to reduce travel time by exploiting nonlinear transit corridors. In plain language, shortcuts through reality. Early tests were unmanned, then came volunteers, then came contracts no one read carefully enough. The first human trial didn't fail immediately. It succeeded too well. The train arrived early, too early. Inside, time stretched, folded, chewed people up. The corridor they'd opened wasn't empty. It was occupied. Something lived there, something curious and hungry. The engineers sobbed, saying they'd mistaken silence for safety. When asked why the train kept returning, he said, "Because we left the door open." The interview never aired. The engineer died the next day. The recording leaked years later, buried deep online. dismissed as a hoax by those who hadn't listened to the terror in his voice. Families of the missing reported shared dreams, same imagery, same sounds, endless corridors, flickering lights, a train that never stopped. Some woke with bruises shaped like fingerprints. Children spoke of the metal hallway without ever being told. Psychologists labeled it collective trauma. But trauma doesn't explain identical details from people who never met. A support group formed in secret. Members compared notes, voices trembling. They believed the missing weren't dead, just delayed, waiting in a place where time meant nothing. Some tried rituals, others tried prayer. A few tried to reach the train themselves, convinced they could bring loved ones back. None returned. The group disbanded after one member mailed letters scheduled for future delivery, each dated the same day, each reading simply, "It's colder now." The final known guard assigned to the original hangar left behind a journal, found years later in an abandoned apartment, pages filled with frantic handwriting. He wrote about voices calling him by name, about feeling guilty for leaving people inside. He believed the train was a test, a mirror reflecting human greed and impatience. "We wanted faster," he wrote. "It gave us forever." His last entry ended mid-sentence. The apartment showed signs of struggle, but no body was found. Neighbors reported hearing a train horn that night. There were no tracks nearby. Official statements never changed. No passengers, no incident. Any evidence to the contrary was labeled misinformation. Yet budgets quietly allocated funds for containment. New facilities built underground. New protocols drafted. The train, it seemed, had multiplied. Reports of similar arrivals surfaced worldwide, quickly suppressed. Different models, same emptiness, same hum. Denial became global, because admitting the truth meant admitting the door was still open, and no one knew how to close it. Researchers studying the phenomenon reached a horrifying conclusion. The train wasn't traveling anymore. It was anchored. Every arrival marked a thinning of reality, a weak point, doors inside doors. Each disappearance widened the gap. The corridor fed on attention, on stories, on belief. Talking about it strengthened the pull, which made suppression pointless. Silence only made people listen harder. A former official anonymously confessed to riding the train during a controlled test. He said he stepped off unchanged, but something followed him back. Reflections moved independently. Clocks stalled around him. He felt constantly observed. "It doesn't need the train anymore," he warned. That was just the invitation. Years later, during a blackout, the train appeared one last time at the original station. Cameras caught it. Authorities couldn't deny it. Doors opened. No one stepped off. No one stepped on. Then slowly the doors closed and the train reversed, moving backward without turning, slipping into darkness where the tunnel should have been. The tracks behind it rusted instantly. The city changed. People avoided stations. Night travel dropped. A quiet paranoia settled in. Every delay sparked fear. Every empty carriage felt wrong. The missing were memorialized without graves. Life went on, limping, pretending not to glance at tunnels too long. Experts who knew the truth agreed on one thing: the phenomenon wasn't over. Technology would try again. Humans always do, faster, cheaper, better, and every attempt risked reopening what should have stayed shut. If a train arrives empty, one memo read, "Do not assume it's vacant." Somewhere the corridor still exists, passengers still wait, time still bends, and every so often, someone swears they hear a train at night, even where no rails remain. If you ever see one arrive with doors open and no one inside, remember this story. Remember Hidden Dark World warned you, and don't board. Because the train that arrived empty is always looking for a return trip.